Hello and welcome to Business Morning. I'm Ladi Williams.
Good morning. I'm Ini John Mekwa. Thank you so much for joining us. Well, we begin with the federal government has concluded plans with international partners for $1 billion syndicated loan to assist micro, small and medium-scale enterprises in the country. In a statement released yesterday, the Minister of Trade and Investments, Mr. Adeni Adebayo, says that the facility is being coordinated by the Bank of Industry to effectively support MSMEs across key sectors of Nigeria's economy with affordable loans of medium to long-term tenure alongside Mauritanian benefits. He also mentioned that the Nigerian Export Promotion Council has launched the Export Expansion Facility, which will enable new and existing MSMEs to respond to the shocks of COVID-19 pandemic while retaining and creating more businesses, particularly for youth and women.
And the central bank has released a list of international money transfer operators approved for diaspora remittances. Some of the money transfer operators listed among the 47 IMTOs by the financial market regulator include InterSwitch Limited, MoneyGram, PayPal Incorporated, Western Union, eTransact, and CashPoint Limited. Earlier this month, the CBN introduced an incentive known as the Naira for Dollar scheme with a 2-month window to pay 5 Naira for every $1 to senders and recipients of international money transfers.
Well, investing in human capital is said to be key in every economic development, and that's one way Seplat Petroleum has chosen to give back to the society through its corporate social responsibility. 100 teachers and 43 chief inspectors of education drawn from Edo and Delta State have been awarded certificates having successfully completed a capacity building training under the Seplat Petroleum Development Company Teacher Empowerment Program. The award ceremony was the first set of graduates from the scheme held in Benin City, the Edo State capital. It also featured an education roundtable with top professionals from the education sector discussing the provision of quality education as a national priority.
The maiden set of graduates of the Seplat Teachers Empowerment Program in high spirits as the event celebrating the successful completion of their training gets underway. But first, their messages to be reflected on.
The skills you have acquired, the critical thinking, the problem-solving skills, these are very key. They are very, very key. You should properly internalize it and ensure that you use it to impact on your students.
The ceremony also features an education roundtable with key professionals, which a political economist, Professor Patu Tomi, moderates.
That you know that you matter.
The gathering of dignitaries, including representatives of Edo and Delta state governments, as well as the traditional institution, thereafter witnesses the award of certificates to the graduates of the program. For the beneficiaries, it's more than a memorable moment.
This opportunity Seplat have offered me has made me to be more of a professional.
You can link the topics together, you can integrate, cooperate with other teachers to see how you can bring this. It is something that I really learned.
The organizers believe the impact of the programs is enormous.
The Education Roundtable tried to show that there are very many stakeholders important in making sure there's quality education in the country. Government is a primary stakeholder, teachers are one, students are one. So how do we bring about a knowledge to share, an opportunity to show what each stakeholder has to do to ensure that the nation has quality education? And I believe we achieved that today with this maiden edition of Seplat Education Roundtable 2021.
Seplat's intervention is considered timely.
Given how we've lost ground over the years, given the new competitiveness that our economy needs to gain, this is very, very timely. We need to get teachers who can remotely, in fact, teach many more people.
The Seplat Teachers Empowerment Program kicked off in November 2020 with a 5-day physical workshop and months of online training, specially designed to equip the teachers with knowledge on teaching applications for science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics.
Welcome back. Well, it's day 2 and the final day of the Monetary Policy Committee meeting of the Central Bank. And later today, the Central Bank governor will be announcing the outcome of the meeting. The consensus, however, amongst most economic analysts is that the committee will choose to leave all monetary policy tools unchanged and affirm the continued adoption of its secondary toolbox in addressing the imbalance in the external accounts and restoring macroeconomic stability. What would the major considerations be as they finalize today? Mr. Oji Demezu, a financial and management consultant and the CEO of Flame Academy and Consulting, gives us his perspective. Thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Demezu.
Morning.
Well,
always my pleasure, Ini.
Thank you.
For inviting
Thank
me.
you. Yeah. So yesterday, the finance minister was quoted by Bloomberg to have announced that the government will start using the NAFEX rate for government transactions. So the NAFEX rate is at 410 naira as against CBN's 379 naira. What does this tell us about the implication for money supply?
Well, Ini, we continue to say these things here, and I'm sure these policymakers are listening. It's only unfortunate that when they listen to us, they hardly take immediate action until things get worse. The central bank is technically devaluing the naira. That's what they are doing by saying that the rate at which official transactions are, transacted or granted will now become the I&E Windows rate is just a way of saying we are devaluing the naira. And this is the third devaluation in a year. From last year, when they moved from 360 upwards towards 380, as in the second one, and now we're seeing it at 410. And in fact, yesterday was 412. So it's just an admission that we cannot continue to pretend that our naira is at a value where it is not. And because we're being reactive instead of proactive, this Polongo dance will continue. As I always say in your studio, we need a central bank that is fully independent to look at the key issues in the economy right now and take proactive decisions, that will help this economy. I can assure you that these ones they are taking is just because even the World Bank is beginning to put some conditions to some loans that are meant for this country, which is quite sad. Because ordinarily, World Bank loans are not meant to come with serious reform requirements or conditions. It's usually IMF that will insist that you do all the reforms that they want you to do. But for us to be doing this now, hopefully because we were targeting a $1.5 billion loan from the World Bank, it's really reactive and quite unfortunate. And because of this program, I'll give you a piece of my mind if the central bank wants to be proactive about their efforts to improve dollar liquidity and improve the value of our currency. In the meantime, what is being done by this NAFEX announcement by the Honorable Minister of Finance is to ensure beyond the fact that we have to devalue to meet some conditions and all of that, is also to ensure that both state governments and federal governments are able to raise more naira in financing our 2021 budget, which is a very huge deficit budget. And naturally, when nations devalue their currency, sometimes it is done to technically improve the acquisition of local currency from the limited dollar inflow that we have to finance our budget, pay salaries, and meet some important capital expenditure if we have anything to spend in that area this year.
All right, Mr. Odemezwe, how would this influence the outcome of the MPC meeting today?
Well, the MPC meeting today, as most analysts have said, it will just be a usual sit-down-they-look approach. Let me put it this way. This is not the right time to be a central bank governor or even a member of the MPC because there's no decision to be taken. Now, let's look at it this way. Nigerian economy is going through a very bad situation. Well, we're not singled out in that. The global economy is still going through some, through the eye of the storm because of the COVID pandemic. And if you look at last year, you found that even though the world projected that we will decline, in our GDP by upwards of 3 to 4%, we were lucky to do 1.9%. In fact, when we went into recession in the second or third quarters of last year, we had projected, I also projected that we will come out of that recession sometime in second quarter of this year. But miraculously, in fact, most global analysts were actually surprised, as I was. Miraculously, we escaped the recession in the fourth quarter of 2020 with the economy growing at a marginal rate of 0.11%, ending 2020 decline at 1.9. So, I mean, but even at that, the economy is still at this very, very low level, requiring some very urgent steps by the central bank's monetary policy announcements to shore up economy. And that will involve usually what we call quantitative easing or some kind of interest rate reduction to boost lending or access to cheap fund to manufacturers and agents in the economy to boost economic growth and productivity, to enhance, our ability to escape the very dire consequences of this recession. We need to create jobs. We need factories to run. And we need to boost productivity and attract investment into the country. That's on the one side. So on that note, you will expect an MPC decision that will favor quantitative easing or monetary easing and interest rate reduction. Now, if you do that, theoretically in economics, if you do that, you will be allowing more quantity of funds into the economy.
Okay, so what would that imply?
Can you allow me just conclude this argument?
Okay. Go ahead.
Just 1 minute. Let me just give a balance of this. So now, doing that to support the economic growth or help recovery will mean, pushing more money into the economy. Mind you, MPC decision or central banks around the world, their core job is to ensure monetary stability, to ensure that money supply in the economy is at a level where economic growth is encouraged. So now, on the other side, you have a central bank that is facing a very, high level of inflation. In fact, Nigerian inflation today is moving very fast towards 20%, which is unpardonable. So on that note, on the other hand, the central bank requires to take rates up to be able to what you call monetary tightening, to be able to mop up excess liquidity, to curtail inflation or reigning inflation, to come somewhere close to our target of 7 to 9%. So if you look at this, central bank needs to lower rates to support economic recovery. They also need to increase rates to curtail inflationary pressures. Right now, even though as we go on, I also want to say it again, the Nigeria's inflation is not obeying these demand pull orders. It's actually cost push. But on the face of it, central bank needs to raise rates to be able to curtail inflation and also reduce rates to boost economic recovery. So what do? As we go on, we can talk about that.
So I wanted to ask that in the midst of this raising rate and reducing it, for boosting economy, where is the place of stabilizing the banking system in the country?
Balance. All right, there are several ways to look at it. The banking system, is stable at this point. Looking at the banks, in the way they operate, even though the yield or in the operations is actually fast reducing because of some controls here and there by the central bank. But Nigerian banks are great. They are very resilient in the way they survive. In fact, today you can see many of them trying to expand into the rest of Africa, East Africa and West Africa and so on to survive. We have very strong banks, and if not that management sometimes could be poor in some places, Nigerian banks are resilient. So the banking system is quite stable. We are much worried more about the economic system because while the banks are trying to survive, funds are still very difficult to get out there to the micro, small, and medium enterprises. So the central bank needs to come up with policies that will encourage availability of cheap funds in the economy. Even if they're not going to reduce rates, they have to find other ways to make money available to the real sector, both small or medium and small investors. Okay, and sorry, I'm having some technical issues here. All right, so there's need to address the issue of availability of funds in the economy. And so in taking their decision, they have to build that seriously into their conclusion. And again, in trying to also boost the inflow of foreign exchange in the economy, there has to be some way that the MPR, that's what you may call the benchmark rate in the economy, should be shored up because inflation running at 19%, I don't know whether they can hear me. I think there's a challenge
We can hear you. We can hear you.
Inflation running at 19% means that and the MPR of 11.5, has the economy running at a negative interest rate of more than 7%. And that's a very big no-no for portfolio investors. So government has to worry about how do we attract portfolio investment in the midst of a very deep negative real interest rate in the economy. So that's a concern for the central bank as they decide today on what to do, whether to raise rates or drop rates. But as most analysts have said, and I also agree with them, we actually are looking at a decision today that will come up with nothing increased, nothing reduced. All rates may be kept where they are, while we think ahead, looking at options, maybe fiscal options, to balance or stabilize this economy.
Okay, Mr. Demezwe, the CBN has continued to emphasize on the new remittance policy with a view to increase FX inflow into Nigeria. What's your take on the recent dollar for naira initiative of the central bank and generally the way the bank has managed the FX market?
Fan of the Central Bank of Nigeria when it comes to FX management. And those who are always afraid of devaluation will not find me a very good friend of theirs. Nigerian Central Bank has been rather too reactive in the FX management policies in this country. Yes, I thank them for the 5 naira they give away to every inflow we have from our diaspora Nigerians through the approved international money transfer operators, whose list I'm sure they will release today, about 47 of them. So it's a good policy with a two-month window to see how we can show up our dwindling diaspora inflow, which had peaked sometime in 2019, getting up to $25 billion. We need to get back to that level. But the most important thing I want to say now is that the central bank, which in all honesty, must review the way they encourage exports and exporters in this country. Let me say, without sounding pessimistic, that this policy of 5 naira for $1 will only scratch the problem. It will not go deep in solving it. Let me tell you, if they care to do research, they will find the evidence that this problem is happening because most exports in Nigeria, the proceeds don't find their way back to the country. They may argue with me till the heavens, but that's a fact. Most exporters, from my knowledge of the banking system, my interaction with many exporters, people are very, 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 how do I put it, disagreeable to having to inflow their proceeds to a basket where they exchange it at 410 naira in the I&E window. Meanwhile, their cost of operation happens in a market where dollar exchanges for 480 naira. In fact, today, transfer is almost approaching 490. That is, if you want to do a transfer outside the CBN approved platform, you want to pay for your export, your import in China or India or America or anywhere, you are likely to buy dollars at 488. So if you are buying at that level and you process whatever you want to export or do whatever business you do and you export and you get dollars, central bank wants you to submit that money at 412 naira at the I&E window. The economic theory or normal economic thinking is that no business leader, no CEO would willingly do that. They must first of all explore ways to avoid doing that. But if you are very strong with your cane, the carrot and stick approach to get them to do that, they will do it grudgingly. Now we need central bank that will find a way to engage all these stakeholders and see whether we can agree with them on a possible way to get them willingly submit their export proceeds whenever they do this export. And mind you, as we struggle with this policy, we are not in the long run encouraging export, making export easier, making more people come into that export circle where we can deepen our...
all right, Mr. Demezwe, we just need to get this in before we let you go. We're talking about the value of the currency, and people say the currency is still undervalued. What, in your opinion, would be the fair value for Naira at this time?
I'm sorry to disappoint you. I won't give you any fair value because we're not getting things right. Naira could be valued at better than 400 Naira to $1. Our bad, policy execution is what has dragged it to this level. Because if we do a proactive thing like Egypt did some years ago, we could hike the, devalue so badly, but by the time we do everything possible to increase all other sources of FX inflow outside the central bank, all the, diaspora inflows, all the export proceeds inflows, and other, little inflows into this country, central bank will be relieved of this, continued hemorrhage or bleeding of our external reserve to be able to defend the currency. So at this point, even 412 for me should be a good value if we had done this when we were insisting on $305 per dollar officially. So we keep only meeting up, catching up. We are doing catch-up approach, reactive policy responses, not evidence-based proactive response to our FX issue. It's worrisome that very soon Naira will exchange for 500 to $1. It's very worrisome. That's what we're going to, because the external reserve is facing big pressure. There are backlogs for Central Bank to pay above $2 billion. And we have refused to grow from about $35 billion despite increase in oil prices. We're in a very difficult position.
Sorry, Mr. Demezwe, we really need to take a break now. Thank you so much, Mr. Oji Demezwe, a financial and management consultant and the CEO of Flame Academy and Consulting. Thank you so much for sharing your perspective with us this day. We really appreciate it. Well, we'll take a break now, and Business Morning will continue in just a moment.
Welcome back, and Ini, today is the day.
It's a big day today.
1:30 p.m.
Yes, and even Chimmy, I think, is setting up, because at 1:30 we're going to have a live discussion just before the announcement, which is expected to be at 2 p.m. by the central bank governor. But before then, we're going to have a panel of analysts to give you...
We'll break it down.
Yes, the factors, the drivers, and some of these things are being considered to reach this decision.
Exactly. But what's your bets, though, for the outcome?
Well, we already heard. I stay with the analysts.
Okay, no problem. So joining us now for Commodities market updates is Desola Sumoni, one of the research analysts with Financial Derivatives Company. Hello, thank you for joining us.
Good morning, Ladi. And
good morning, Desola. Great to have you.
Good morning. Welcome.
Good morning. So what do you make of the decision by the federal government to adopt the NAFEX rate as the official exchange rate?
Thank you for that question. I think the answer depends on who you ask. So let me give you some background. First, this is a tacit devaluation. It is the third in the last 12 months. And it is a move towards a more market-determined exchange rate, which is positive for investors. Investors have been clamoring for unified exchange rates or a reformed exchange rate regime. In multilateral organizations such as the IMF and the World Bank, they have been recommending that Nigeria should reform its exchange rate market. So in that regard, it is positive. For the federal government, it is also positive in the sense that it gets more bang for their buck in terms of oil revenue. So for every $1 of oil revenue that Nigeria earns, now with this new exchange rate, they earn about 40 naira more. So that is positive, more money essentially. And it's possibly going to increase the money supply, and some analysts have argued that it may have some effect on inflation. Now concerning corporates, for instance, corporates in the manufacturing sector who import a huge portion of their inputs in their production process, this would increase their cost of production, which may now translate into higher prices for the end consumers. Also, for your PTA, your BTA, I think now it's going to be priced at, I think it's 410 now, is it 412? And that means that 410 it is, yes. So 410, that means it would possibly discourage imports, or move international travel out of the reach of some people. So overall, I think that's the effect. As I say, it depends on who you ask.
Well, for you now, what do you think this would mean for the domestic commodities market?
I think the effect on the commodities market would be transmitted through, firms, organizations that I said earlier that, import a huge portion of their inputs in the manufacturing sector. I think that may lead to, higher prices. If, they transfer some of these costs down to their the final consumers, yes, it may lead to higher prices, yeah.
Okay, so coming at the time where the Monetary Policy Committee is actually meeting, how do you think this will influence the outcome today?
Like you alluded to earlier, there are many factors to consider, not only the exchange rate regime. So we have inflation. You know that inflation currently is about 17.3%. That was for February, and FDC forecasts that it will increase to about 17.8%. So there's inflation, there's the rate of unemployment, which currently is at 33.3%, second highest in sub-Saharan Africa, and that was for Q4 2020. And Nigeria in Q4 2020, we narrowly recovered from a recession, posting positive growth of 0.1%. So I think those are very important factors that the central bank will consider. In addition to the exchange rate pressures, like the last speaker said, there's this huge backlog at the last Article 4 consultation by the IMF. The IMF estimated that there's still a backlog of about $2 billion, which the central bank is trying to meet monthly by just allocating some portion to it. So there's all these factors that the central bank needs to consider before arriving at a decision. Also, looking at the interest rate environment, we've seen that the central bank kind of is signaling, trying to mop up excess liquidity. We are seeing that in the stop rate of in the stop rate of the government securities, OMO, and treasury bills. A 364-day bill is currently priced at 6.5% per annum, and a 91-day bill is around 2% per annum. So these are the factors, I think, that are the front burner of the Monetary Policy Committee, and they are going to look at the effect of whatever decision they make on these factors. But we think that at this time, I think the most likely outcome is that they will hold all monetary policy parameters unchanged.
So if we're looking at the hold decision and maybe a hike, how will this, I mean, could you paint a scenario? How would the hold affect the domestic commodities market, and how would a hike or an increase, how would it affect the domestic market?
Okay, increasing the benchmark interest rate at this time will simply what's the word now, to increase the cost of credit, and that would not be positive for that would increase the cost of credit, and it would not be positive for growth, especially given that currently Nigeria is trying to stimulate, growth, is trying to embark on expansive policies to, increase spending so that we can have some economic activity, trying to stimulate economic activity essentially. So increasing at this time would not be the optimal option. But regarding the commodities markets, really historically, the transmission mechanism between the central bank's decision and the markets have been weak historically. And for the average guy on the street, he doesn't care that, he doesn't even know that the central bank is meeting. All he knows is what happens to the prices of the commodities that he buys. So I think the biggest effect we're going to see in terms of prices will come from the exchange rates, this new exchange rate adjustment that we just had yesterday.
Okay, so all prices in the global commodities market declined by 0.59% to about $64.19 per barrel. What are the factors, the key factors here driving oil prices at this time, and what is your near-term outlook?
I would say it's cautious optimism, right? So optimism in the sense that we are seeing a recovery in global oil demand, and the speed or the pace at which vaccinations are rolling out globally, it shows that we are seeing a gradual return to normalcy. For instance, in some of the largest consumers of oil globally, in the US, for instance, we are seeing air and road travel hit record levels since the start of the pandemic, which shows that things are getting better, things are going back to normal. Similarly, in China, we are seeing demand for oil reach pre-pandemic levels. So these two countries alone are very huge importers of oil. So that signals some strong recovery in oil demand. Also, but caution is coming from Europe, where we are seeing lockdowns. For instance, in the UK, we are still under lockdown. We've been since January. I'm sick of it, but we have no choice. So there's lockdown in Europe that is still persisting, and fresh lockdowns. Germany recently announced a new lockdown. So this is keeping like a cap on the pace of price increases. So going in the near term, I would say that there are strong indications, that there will be a recovery in oil demand, a strong recovery in oil demand in the second half of this year, particularly in the summer months where vaccination will have reached some threshold levels. And for instance, in the UK, once international travel is lifted, many people are going to travel for summer, so that would increase demand for oil.
Well, Turkey, which is one of Nigeria's major trading partners, fired their apex governor, their central bank governor, which has led to a 9% depreciation in the Turkish lira. How do you see this development affecting Nigeria's foreign trade, especially with Turkey?
Let me give you some background. I always like giving background. So this is the third central bank governor that the Turkish government is firing in the past 2 years. In the past 2 years. For context, each governor has a term of 4 years, and this recently fired governor, his name was Nasir Akbal. He was fired 4 months into his term. Why? The reason was simply because he has a different view on monetary policy than the president. And I mean, there are many issues about central bank independence and stuff. But he, as an economist, is of the view that, you need to increase interest rates to curb inflation, right? Turkey's inflation currently is around 15% day. Like Nigeria, they also have a lot of pressure on their exchange rate. So he, as Nasir Akbal, has embarked on a contractionary monetary policy stance. So since he became the governor, he has increased benchmark interest rate by 875 basis points, bringing everything to, I think, 19%. But the governor, the president, views, he's not an economist. He thinks that higher interest rates causes inflation, which for me, I do not understand. I cannot see the link. Anyway, so because of recently the Turkish central bank governor increased interest rate 200 basis points, the president did not like it and he fired him. Then he appointed a new governor who shares his views on monetary policy. So what was the impact of this? The markets reacted really, for lack of a better word, violently. We saw the stock markets drop sharply by 9%. The Turkish lira declined sharply by actually 15%, but it recovered. So what does it mean for us, Nigeria? Well, it means a weaker Turkish lira is positive for us in the sense that their exports will be cheaper. So for every naira you have, you can get more value for your naira in Turkey. So I think essentially just makes their exports cheaper. So for Nigeria, you can buy more with your naira in Turkey. I think that's the effect for us.
All right. There's a lot, but rainfall in southwest Nigeria is predicted to boost cocoa supplies, according to Wall Street Journal. How will this development affect global cocoa prices and Nigeria's export revenues, given that cocoa is one of Nigeria's largest agricultural export?
Rain is good for cocoa, but not too much rain. So for some context, Nigeria there are 4 West African countries who constitute about 70% of global cocoa production. We have Ivory Coast, Ghana, Nigeria, and Cameroon. So usually any increase in production in any of these countries would lead to lower global cocoa prices. Nigeria's cocoa production for this 2020-2021 marketing year is projected to increase to 270,000 metric tons compared to the 250,000 last year. So the rainfall is positive. It will increase our production, but the effect is that it will reduce prices in the global commodities market, which we are seeing already. But in terms of revenue, I think Nigeria's revenue for cocoa, I think, is more sensitive to production rather than prices. So I think overall the effect on revenues for Nigeria, particularly the cocoa farmers, will be positive. But in the context of Nigeria's export mix, I think cocoa, despite being one of Nigeria's largest agricultural exports, the contribution to Nigeria's export revenue is quite small. It's around 3%. So overall, the contribution to Nigeria's export revenue is small, but to the cocoa farmers, I think it's quite huge and it's positive.
So apart from the cocoa now, talk us through the trends in the domestic commodities market.
So in the domestic commodities market, really, it's a mixed bag of positive and negatives. Like you can see in the slides, we've seen sharp declines in some commodities. We have seen tomatoes, pepper, onions, and palm oil all decline sharply compared to last month. And that is because of, last month there was this insecurity issues, and I think there was this tribal clash between the northern farmers and the south, where they blocked, the flow of goods, and that was why the price jumped so sharply last month. But now that those blockages have been lifted, prices are beginning to taper down. So we are seeing all these prices taper down. We are seeing also, on the other hand, we are seeing some price increases We are seeing the price of new yam, a medium-sized new tuber of yam, increase 15% to 1,500. We are seeing a price of 50 kg bag of gari increase 5.5% to 13,300 compared to last month. We are seeing also a bag of beans, 50 kg bag of beans, increase 36% to 30,000. Also, we are seeing some prices flat. Seeing the price of rice flat at 25,000 naira for a 50 kg bag. We are seeing flour also flat at 50 kg bag of flour flat at 14,500, and sugar also flat at 19,000. So overall, I think it's a mixed bag, really.
What's your outlook? What's your outlook for the soft commodities and grains in the global commodities market? What's your outlook?
So currently, thank you for that question. So for the grains, I'll say the grains usually they move in the same direction. Currently, as you can see from our slide, their prices are lower. The prices are lower because of soft demand globally amid huge supply, and we think that this soft demand is going to persist in the near term. We are seeing, for instance, for wheat, we are seeing huge supply from Ukraine, which is one of the largest producers globally, and for corn, we are seeing weak demand coming from China, which is also one of the largest producers. So I think these factors will persist in the near term. For the soft commodities such as sugar and cocoa, for sugar we are seeing again huge supply from India, which is one of the largest producers of sugar globally. But there's weak demand because of many of the factors that affect the demand for sugar that's still under lockdown. For instance, these big sporting events where there's a lot of sugar used in production, we don't have large events now because of lockdown, so there's still weak demand for sugar, and that is why the price of sugar is soft. So I think when we start having these huge demands, these huge events back, then I think that demand for sugar will pick up, and then I think the price will pick up. For cocoa, the huge supply coming from West Africa, I think that's what's driving the prices at this time, and I think it will persist in the near term.
All right, thank you so much, Desola Sumoni from Financial Derivatives Company. Thank you so much for sharing your perspective with us. Well, we'll just take a moment and we'll be right back.
The Dangote Group stands at the forefront of African enterprise. Since 1978, we've touched the lives of millions of people by meeting their basic needs. Our belief in the promise of Africa has taken us into 14 African countries with substantial investments that will propel the continent towards greater prosperity, promising jobs, improved standards of living, and economic growth. Dangote, for an empowered Africa.
The Channels 24 app means you'll always be in touch with the news. Get the latest local and international stories on the go. And there's our social media platforms for news from around the world. Watch the news live and play videos that matter to you. You can also check the Eyewitness section to report events around you. Just click on the Eyewitness icon and follow the instructions to upload your content. Channels 24 app, the news at your fingertips.
All right, welcome back. Well, yesterday at the equities market at the Nigerian Stock Exchange, we saw the market ending in green, even though the value, the volume, the deal was in the red. Well, to tell us more about activities and expectation, of course, from the MPC, we have Abdul Rashid Momo. He's a stockbroker with TRW Stockbroker. Good morning, Abdul Rashid, and thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you. Good morning, Ini. How are you?
Well, we can't talk about it enough. Your expectation from the MPC and how you think it will affect the market?
Generally, reflections on the rate that happened, the market seems to be, I'll call, range bound. You know, we've been an upward trend for a long time, and now what we are seeing is more of correction. Despite financials coming into play from Zenith to GTB to UBA, prices have been adjusting themselves. Technically, the way we look at the market, it's one, is the market making a new high? No. Is the market, are we seeing the bottom of the market yet? No, not yet. Prices for now have adjusted from the highs of what we saw last year to midpoint. What we need to see now is, I would say the market is range bound for now. Until we start seeing strong support levels before we can say we are in a bull trend. So for now, it's still what we are seeing more is like people selling in strength and buying in weakness. That's for short-term traders. It's still a cautious market for now. That's the word to use.
Well,
there's still money to be made, but not the kind of rallies we're having last year. So it's still a cautious market. There's still money to be made, but not those wide margins we're experiencing.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you so much, Abdul-Rashid Momo, for sharing your thoughts with us. It's a cautious market at the Nigerian Stock Exchange, and we hope more people will go there. Chimi is one person that I hope will go there. But anyway, we'll take a moment, and when we come back, we'll go to London. Welcome back, and now we go to London. Good morning, Juliana. Well, the government is creating 4 regional trade and investment hubs to boost economic growth across the UK. Tell us more about this.
Well, yeah, this announcement was made yesterday by the International Trade Secretary, Liz Truss, and it's, as you said, it's part of a way of boosting exports, particularly to regions that some would say London and Westminster have forgotten about. So these regional hubs will be in Edinburgh, Darlington, Cardiff and Belfast, and it just comes, well, the announcement comes after it was reported that in the month of January, exports out of Britain to the EU fell by 40%. We know that exporting in this country creates about 6.8 million jobs. About 75% of them are outside of London. So yes, it is part of a grander Conservative Boris Johnson scheme to get more jobs out of London and, most importantly, to help those with regional expert knowledge to market their goods across the globe.
Well, the boss of the London Stock Exchange Group is in the news today after a report shows that he almost tripled his pay to £6.9 million last year after the company's £19.5 billion takeover of financial data provider Refinitiv led to a surge in LSE's share price. How are the markets reacting to this report?
Well, it's certainly not a market story at all. But yes, you know, David Schwimmer is now a very, very rich man. And they say he's a very wealthy man because he's handling a bigger job, a job that has grown significantly, as you said, since the London Stock Exchange Group merged with the Refinitiv data company. In fact, that was one of the biggest acquisitions in British business history. Since that time, the LSEG share price has risen 50%, as you say, and so has David Schwimmer's take-home pay. So what they've put out there is that in 2019 he earned £2.46 million. In 2020 it rose to £6.88 million, a base pay of £800,000, £1.4 million in bonuses, £4.3 million in long-term stock interest, and then there are so many other things like the share price, etc., etc. Of course, the left-leaning newspapers are going in on him. With most of the right-leaning newspapers, it's you know, happy days for David Schwimmer.
Yeah, he's a rich man. Well, UK unemployment has fallen for the first time since the pandemic. Tell us about that and other data in the market.
Yeah, interesting, actually. Even though a lot of economists had picked that unemployment might rise by just 0.1%, it's actually fallen by 0.1% in the 3 months of January, coming in at 5% in the 3 months of December. It was at 5.1%, which does show that, you know, there could be some stability coming into the labour market after a year today. It is an anniversary today of the day that Boris Johnson, the Prime Minister, asked people to stay at home, and even though unemployment has risen significantly since then, I believe, and this is what some of the headlines are saying here in Britain, the worst case scenario for the job market could finally be over. However, we do and we will have these furlough schemes and the government schemes winding down, but you know, this is Britain, there is lots of innovation here, lots of job creations going on, particularly in the tech and innovation creative hub. So yeah, this is brilliant news, the fact that unemployment has stalled.
Congratulations to you guys in the UK. All right, Juliana, thank you so much for joining us and enjoy the rest of your day. Well, now we'll go over to Lad Williams, and Bitcoin is not looking so attractive these days.
Yeah, major pullback this morning. Yeah, but sorry.
It's a correction. Let's comfort ourselves with that.
It's a correction.
It's a correction.
So I'll be using my magical screen today. Yeah. So let's look at the market cap. $1.67 trillion, down about 6.84% this morning. 24-hour volume, $137.91 billion. Up about 29.24%. Bitcoin dominance, 59.78%. That is good for the altcoins, with Bitcoin dominance going down there. Price of Bitcoin at this morning, $53,530, down 7%. Big pullback there. 24-hour volume, $61.295 billion. Let's look at Ethereum. Price of Ethereum, $1,663, down 7.35%. 24-hour volume, $25.075 billion. The market is actually retracing seriously and is affecting alts. Let's look at the top alts by market cap. See BNB there, down 5%. ADA, down 9%, still on that profit-taking. Polkadot, down 6%, but surprisingly, XRP still doing well, 8% up this morning. I feel like they might have good news with that SEC directive coming up. Let's look at the top 5 gainers now. Top 5 gainers, Dent. See Dent there up 73%. Big move there by Dent. T-Fuel, amazing run. 28%. Let's talk to Solomon Amunde now, crypto market analyst. Hello, Solomon.
Hello, Mike. Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning. Great to have you. Bitcoin is down this morning about 7 to 9% at this hour. And an NFT is selling for $6 million. What is it about these NFTs?
Yeah, and I would say 2021 has been the year for NFT. They've been doing very, very well. Actually, the one that was sold for $6 million was an art piece by people, an artist. And it was actually first sold for less than $100. And this is a secondary sale, which was done about 4 hours ago for about $6 million. And it was bought that by no other person than Justin Sun, the founder of Tron Network. So NFT is bubbling, and so many persons are cashing out. Imagine buying an art piece for about $50 or $200.
But why pay so much for an NFT when something that can actually be replicated? Why pay so much money? Hello, Solomon. Okay, looks like we lost Solomon there. So these NFTs keep astonishing us, the market. Let's look at the top 5 losers, because when Bitcoin goes down, the altcoins suffer. There it is. One down 21.88%. Harmony, that's one of the Binance Launchpad tokens. It's done well this year, but when Bitcoin moves up or down in a big way, the altcoins suffer. SIA Coin there down 21.81%, HNT down 16.77%, and we have VeChain down 16%. So we can expect the gas for VeChain to also correct at this point. Luna also down 15.38%. So when you see these big numbers, you know that Bitcoin is doing something big.
I guess this is the right time. I mean, this is the right time to actually enter the market.
Yeah, buy in the red. Buy in the red. It's always
we
better.
Can wait a bit. Who knows? By weekend, it could go down a little bit more.
I can't promise you that. Highly volatile market.
Very volatile.
Not financial advice.
At all.
Okay, I think do we have Solomon back? Hello, Solomon. Hello, Solomon.
I'm with you.
All right, great to have you back. So what is the cause of this pullback this morning?
Yeah, it's just like a correction. We had a major rush to about 61K, and it's very much expected for us to get about 10%, 15% correction. So it's still possible that we might see Bitcoin drop to like 46 to 48,000, which I highly doubt, but it's possible. It's still there. That can happen. If we break 53,000 today, we'll definitely see 58K. We'll definitely see 48K, sorry, yeah.
That's a big number. And I also see a Bitcoin dominance slipped about to 59%. What does that mean for altcoins?
Yeah, it means that altcoins should start pumping. They should start. As long as Bitcoin doesn't perform any sharp dip, altcoins should at least start going up.
Okay.
So we should play sideways for a while. Between today and tomorrow, we should be sideways.
Okay, Solomon. All right, thank you so much for the update. Solomon is a crypto market analyst. Thank you so much. So, Ini, there you have it.
Yeah. Well, I'm still waiting for the 100,000.
Yes, most analysts believe Bitcoin will hit 100,000
this year, right?
I don't know how that's going to happen, but
we're watching.
Eyes on the mark. We're tracking it.
Well, that's it. Thank you so much. But don't forget that at 1:30 we would have a special discussion ahead of the MPC decision, which of course would be at 2 p.m. So that discussion would cover that, and afterwards to analyze some of the decisions and the drivers of the decision
big
of the
day
MPC.
For the MPC.
It's a very big day for the CBN and of course for the business desk here on Channels Television. So you need to stay tuned to us. We have a lot of information for you. That's it for today. I'm Ini John Mekwa.
And I'm Ladi Williams. Thank you for watching.